everyone who has joined us. I don't know how many we are, but I'm going to crack on. Yes, so this is a very much an abridged version of a normal presentation that I give that's normally 40 minutes long. And if you want to know a lot more, I'm going to now tell you to save the date, because on the 4th of November, Jade, John and co have invited me to give my full presentation on that occasion. So pop that date in your diary and jump on board when you get the relevant invitation. You'll see at the bottom of my slide, I call myself a philanthropic author. That's because when I wrote my book, which launched now a year ago, John, it's not so new anymore, I decided I didn't want to earn any money from it. I wanted to give it all away to charity. So that's why I think I've earned the title philanthropic author. So I'd like you to look at this list of people and consider for a moment who's the odd one out. Oops, what have I done? Gone wrong. There we are. The answer is Roberta Flack. And that is not because she's a woman. The answer is that all of these people have suffered from motor neurone disease. In fact, the reason that Roberta is the odd one out is she is one of the few famous people who has not yet died from it. All of these other people have been in the news at some point in their careers for having developed MND and died from it. 5,000 people in the UK live with MND at any given point in time. Every year, there's 2,500 new people diagnosed and 2,500 people die from it. So there's a steady 5,000 people, and that's split between men and women pretty much equally. And the youngest person I've ever met with the disease is 22. But I'm going to talk about one particular person today, and that is Alan Carter, who was my lovely husband. I met Alan in June 2006. We were both widows. We'd both been married before. We were both divorced. Neither of us had any children. And we were basically internet dating. That's how we met. So we came together in 2006 through internet dating. And we shared common interests. We loved traveling, we loved sport, we loved skiing. And we soon fell in love and became a very, very happy couple. In 2008, he moved in with me and we started our life together. And as with all good fairy tales, there came a point in 2012 when he proposed to me, and we ended up on the same date, the 14th of June, 2014, we ended up becoming Mr. and Mrs. Carter. You're all allowed to go R at this point because that's the romantic bit. Now, we were on holiday in September 2017, and Alan said to me, I'm a bit worried. There's something wrong with my right arm. We'd been playing a bit of golf, and he was saying that his arm was weak. So as per any good wife, I said to him, well, when we get home, you should go and see a doctor and find out what it is. And he did go and see a doctor, and the GP said, well, it could be anything. It could be Parkinson's. You might have had a stroke. You might have had this. You might have had the other. And the long and the short of it is he then went and had some tests. And when those test results came through, which was quite quick in our case because we decided to go private rather than wait for National Health, because the sort of stuff the doctor was talking about was quite nasty. When those results came through, which was in November 2017, we were told he'd got motor neurone disease. We were told there was no cure for it, there was no surgery, and there was no real effective drugs, and that he should go away and he should live the best life he can while he can. Now, this was a 62-year-old man who was playing golf, skiing, going to the gym regularly. He didn't smoke. He didn't drink to excess. He ate far more healthily than I did. And as you can imagine, that diagnosis felt to us like a massive bombshell. Our world, which had been so happy since 2006, suddenly smashed into smithereens and became completely crazy, crazy bad. So those of you who've never come across MND, I'll just give you a quick, back to basics here. Basically, what it is the signals from the brain that go down your nervous system to your muscles stop working. So basically, all the times you want to pick up a drink, pick up a cup of tea, comb your hair, scratch an itch, all of those things, you think that you want to do them. I want to have a drink, I want to scratch an itch, I want to comb my hair, but your arms won't work. They just don't work because the signal doesn't get there. And that also applies to your legs. So walking and using your arms, your limbs becomes impossible because those muscles eventually atrophy because they're not being used. This also applies to things like speech muscles, swallowing muscles, and the muscles around your lungs that help you breathe. So people with MND usually die at the end of their life because the breathing muscles completely stop. So this is what we were facing back in 2017. So as you can imagine, the impact of this was frightening, terrifying, sad, annoying, frustrating, all manner of millions of emotions we went through. The biggest emotion of all was sadness. We both would spontaneously burst into tears whenever we saw each other in the house. And we obviously had the terrible job of telling Alan's family and all of our friends. And that made the whole thing feel even worse because we were providing grief to other people. Now, at that point of diagnosis, you get referred to the professionals. And in our case, that was the Motor Neurone Disease Association and everything that it entails. And we were sent huge amounts of information, which was probably very lovely, but I never read any of it. It felt like at that time that we were being overloaded with a lot of information. And of course, emotionally, we weren't in a good position to take that information. So one of the biggest missing factors at the point of diagnosis was emotional support from professionals. And I don't care what disease somebody is diagnosed with. I'm sure that people diagnosed with cancer or people diagnosed with Parkinson's or any neurological condition, dementia, whatever, the shock and the sadness and the upset and all of the emotions that we went through will be the same for people with cancer, etc. And what I think is vastly, vastly needed is counselling, professional counselling, automatically provided, not an option, not if you need it, here's a phone number, but we're now going to put you in touch with a counsellor who will help you through this early stages of you getting your head around this disease diagnosis and some of the challenges of those decisions you're going to have to be making in the early days. So with all this emotional burden, very quickly, Alan and I went into something called anticipatory grief, which I'd never even heard of, but I soon discovered what it was when we finally got referred to a counsellor through a hospice that was supporting us. The other impact of the kind of diagnosis that we got was we had to both make this decision. Do you carry on working? Well, I don't know about any of you guys, but if somebody told you you had 6 months to 2 years to live, and in that time you were going to become paralyzed, I don't think many of you would want to carry on working. And that's what Alan decided. He said, I'm not going to do it. Now, obviously that meant we lost a bit of income. I decided not to stop work straight away because I needed something solid to ground me, something that wasn't chaotic like my home life had suddenly become. So I carried on working for as long as I could, but because Alan became paralyzed quite quickly, I needed to stop work and look after him, which was quite a challenge because he was a 10-stone gentleman and I'm a 9-stone weakling, and looking after a 10-stone paralyzed individual is quite hard work. Eventually we got carers. The other decision was, do we move house? That was totally not practical. So the decision then became, where's Alan going to sleep in terms of his care? Because sooner or later we knew he wasn't going to make it up the stairs. We decided that he would sleep in the dining room. There were other adaptations needed to the house. For example, we had steps from our back door and our front door to the outside world. So we were going to need ramps. We were going to need grab handles. We were going to need all sorts of stuff. And sooner or later, the council provided some of those things, but other things we paid for privately. There's a lot of financial implications when one person and then the other one stops work, and neither of us were on a pension at the time. and there's all this cost involved. And one of the other big costs was we needed to build a wet room in our house. Now, for that, we were fortunate that the MND Association provides grants to families living with these conditions, and we applied for one. We also applied for personal independence payments, which Alan got, and that helped us fund other things that we needed. But sooner or later, because this disease is managed in a home, our home stopped being a home and basically became a hospital. We ended up with hoists, we ended up with a hospital bed, we ended up with equipment all around the place, drugs all around the place. So our happy, lovely private home soon became a hospital. And also privacy disappears because Alan's care was in the home. Every time a medical person or a health provider wanted to meet him, we either had to go to a hospital, a hospice, or they would come to us. And a lot of the time they came to us. So our house became a place where lots of people were coming and going. And it never really felt like a home after that. So in the early days, despite this devastating disease, Alan and I did manage to do some traveling. And as I've said, this is a truncated version of the big story. So you're getting very quick snapshots here. We managed to go to Vietnam, which was a holiday we already had planned in our diary. Quite a challenging place to go. You know, if you go to a place like Vietnam or any of the Asian countries, the roads and the pavements aren't always that easy to navigate, but we managed it. And we also went to Scotland, as you can see here, because we had some friends who were cycling from John O'Groats to Land's End. And when they got to to John O'Groats, we managed to get there first. It was a very freezing cold day. As you can see, Alan's in a wheelchair here, and I put a blanket over him. And we bought loads of beers and we bought loads of champagne. And we didn't hang about very long. We just had this picture taken, and then very quickly we jumped into the motorhome that had been touring with these guys on the bikes, and we all got well and truly drunk on that occasion, I can assure you. The picture on the right-hand side, it was taken in Wales. I don't know how many of you are from Wales, but Wales at the time was well geared up for people with disabilities. You'll see here, Alan is in a very interesting type of wheelchair. This is a beach wheelchair that they have in Pembrokeshire. I'd heard about it on Radio 4. I said to Alan, let's go on holiday to Wales. We found a holiday cottage that was adapted for people with disability, and we went down to the beach, and Alan had a most wonderful time getting right up close to the ocean and in this lovely wheelchair. Here's some other photographs for you. On the left, this was the day we managed to get the wet room sorted out. For 6 weeks, while we were waiting for the wet room to be built and Alan couldn't make it up the stairs to our normal bedroom, I'd had to take care of Alan in the downstairs cloakroom, which was very cramped. He couldn't stand. He had to sit on a stool, and I used to shave him, wash his hair, clean his teeth, wash all of his rest of his body, and put all of his deodorants and things on in the downstairs cloakroom, which is a very tiny room. And that was quite hard. Now, in my case, I used to do it with next to nothing on. When the carers used to do it, they had to do it in full clothing and plastic aprons. And for them, it was more like being in a sauna. I felt very sorry for them. Alan used to quite like it when I used to do it in my underwear, I think. The middle picture was the first day we were able to get out of the house in the electric wheelchair, because once the electric wheelchair arrived, getting in and out the house became a lot harder than when we had the manual wheelchair. But this was the day the ramps were finished and we were able to get outside in the sunshine. And you can see there already, Alan's arms and legs are looking quite spindly from a man who used to do marathon running and long distance cycling, where he'd had good muscle tone. He now has no muscle tone. And the other picture on the right-hand side was when we got our wheelchair adapted vehicle. Again, we had to pay for this. We used the PIP payments to cover the cost of the monthly fees that it cost us to hire this thing. But it gave us freedom. The freedom was something that was really lacking when you haven't got a wheelchair adapted vehicle. So basically, in summary, we made the best of a bad situation. That was our mantra. We had loads of other mantras, which I cover in the full talk. I talk about all of our coping strategies in the full talk. So let's talk a little bit now about the challenges of all of this, because it really was not easy. I talk about it lightly now, but at the time, it was heartbreaking, it was challenging, it was difficult. Emotionally, through the whole journey, I struggled. But the bigger challenges were around time management. Alan was being cared for in the home. I stopped work. These are just a small section of people who used to either come to our house or we used to have to go to them. You'll see there all the stuff in green is the different hospitals we were under. The QE hospital in Birmingham was where our MND nurse came from. And our neurologist started off in Coventry Hospital, but ended up being in the QE hospital. But all of our
Hazel, 5 minutes.
Okay, all of our ventilation needs came from another hospital. These are all the other people who looked after us from a mental and spiritual health point of view. So time management was a big issue. Juggling appointments was a big issue. Differing IT systems was another issue. I had to keep repeating information every time we had a meeting with anybody. I was having to reconfirm all the same details over and over again, including what drugs Alan was on and what allergies he had. And these were things I thought ought to be all standard information on a system somewhere. Dealing with CHC and the social services was another major challenge, as everybody knows. That's a tough one. And the quality of care has varied tremendously. So towards the end of 2018, Alan was now 100% paralysed. He was on a ventilator day and night. He was on a syringe driver in his legs. We were having carers for 2 hours every morning, lunchtime, evening, and bedtime. And sooner or later, he got aspiration pneumonia and was rushed into hospital. And at New Year's 2018, just before 2019 came, he was in hospital, and we sent this message out on Facebook. Now, this photograph here was taken while he was in a hospice, which is where he moved to after being in hospital. And it was on the 4th of June, and a friend took it. And it turned out to be the very last picture that was ever taken, because the very next day, Alan's breathing muscle stopped working. I was with him while he died. And I go into more details on all of this on the big talk. But that's the day my heart broke, and it's never been really mended, if I'm honest. So I went into widowhood and lockdown all at the same time, because he died just before lockdown. And life goes on for me now. I moved house in 2021. In 2022, I donated a kidney to save the life of my brother. I published the book last year on Alan's birthday, and I became a trustee on the board of the MND Association. And I also became a public speaker. I now speak all over the country on this subject. I'm an advocate for carers, people with terminal diseases, and I'm an advocate for hospice movement. Here's my book. This is the only place you can get my book from. It's not in shops. And this is because I give 100% away to charity. So if you're interested in reading the whole story, which is 230 pages, 130,000 words, I wrote it in lockdown, then jump onto this website and buy yourself a copy. All of the money goes to charity, and I've sold over 1,000 copies so far, and I've raised over £12,000. So life's good. We don't know what's around the corner. We all know we're going to die. Say I love you to the people in your life. Create your bucket list and make the most of every day. And save the 4th of November for the full talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Hazel. Goodness me, what a journey. What a journey for you and Alan. It's just extraordinary. Hazel is quite right. 4th of November is when we are delighted to be welcoming Hazel to do the full talk on this. And it's one of those things you just need to just kind of get in your seat, get a good cup of tea in front of you, and listen and contribute as well, I would suspect, at the close of the talk.